So, Mr. Quinones,
Yes.
what's interesting about you is that you've seemed to bridge the gap between serious, controversial journalism and family entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
And as a person of color and such a increasingly polarizing nation, what would you say to a young journalist who himself or herself is trying to bridge the gap themselves between mainstream entertainment and journalism?
Well, I think what we do on What Would You Do is still journalism. We use hidden cameras, and of course we do use actors to create the situation, but the reactions we're getting are very real. So it's like the ultimate reality show in that sense. So I don't think it's purely entertainment. I mean, a lot of the scenarios we look at are about race and religion and bullying and bigotry. So it's not fully entertainment, but I get your point. You know, it's not straight news. And I covered straight news for 30 years at ABC before I did What Would You Do? So I think you bridge it by just staying interesting, by looking at topics that are in the topics of conversation. We watch what's on social media. We get our ideas for What Would You Do from social media. So I think as long as it's interesting, and you're giving the audience something revealing, I think the gap is not that difficult to bridge. I used to do hidden camera reporting all the time. I would go undercover and swim across the Rio Grande for a story on immigration. I went undercover for an investigation of the meatpacking industry. So those things, I mean, that's using hidden cameras and being someone that it's not strictly a reporter, but rather you're now an employee of a meatpacking plant or you're an immigrant. So it's not that, it's as long as it's interesting and as long as it, it sparks interest, I think you're fine.
Perfect. So my next question is, since 2010, you've been covering events such as the Chilean mine disaster. You crossed the Devil's Highway, and you've even covered a religious sect in northern Arizona. So through that, you've displayed a huge level of confidence and hard work, but at the same time, you've also put yourself in extreme danger. So my question is, why do you, to report stories like that and to share stories and to show the world those stories, what makes it worth it for you, especially when it puts yourself in such great personal danger?
Well, you look at the greater good. What good is coming out of this story by me putting myself in a little bit of danger? We're not ridiculous about it. Often we won't push it as far as we might want to, but there are times when I have. I mean, when I was in Sierra Leone doing a story on blood diamonds, it was very dangerous for journalists to go out into the diamond mining fields. And yet, I felt we couldn't tell the story without going there and interviewing the people who are mining those diamonds and then selling them on the black market. I've always felt that, if the greater good is so important, any journalist, you scratch the surface of his skin and he's a reformer. He wants to change the world. And to me, that's more important than my little concern about my own safety. Again, we're not ridiculous about it. ABC News makes certain that we're careful and that we have security when we need it, but you have to take chances sometimes to get the story.
And my last question for you is that if you had advice for your younger 18-year-old self, what would you say to him?
Be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable, because that is the birthplace of creativity. And success. It's not sitting outside and watching something develop because you're too scared to be vulnerable. It's throwing yourself into the arena and becoming vulnerable. Then I think you can reap the success of being a great reporter, and it applies to anything in life for that matter. You don't want to live life looking back and saying, I wish I had gotten involved, looking at it from the outside. Do what you're doing, jump in there, be bold, be brave. I grew up in the barrio here, a very tough neighborhood. No one in my family was a reporter. No one was in television. My father was a janitor who cleaned these buildings in this city. My mother was a cleaning lady who worked in the rich part of town. But something in me wanted journalism so much, wanted broadcasting so much that I took all kinds of crazy gambles. And and never took no for an answer. Because I was told many times, you're never going to make it. You don't have what it takes. You know, you have a nice voice, but you should be in radio, not television. And I didn't listen to that. I threw caution to the wind, and I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and I made it.
Thank you, Mr. Quinones. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for that advice as well.
You're the
Definitely gonna
best,
keep that
man.
in mind.
Thank you.
So much.